team members working together daily through the project, we want to make sure they have visibility and access, and they have easy ways to get in touch with us. Number 2 is building projects around motivated individuals, giving the environment they need and the support they need to get the job done. So this is one of my favorite, honestly, principles, because each team will have different needs. We have different processes, maybe slightly different environments, different deliverables, different things that we're creating or producing. And every team, especially when you've been in a team for a long time, will start to learn the nuances of how we work best together in this specific group of people. And we want to enable different departments, different areas, different teams to align with how they work best. And one of the great features of Hive is that different projects can have unique project settings. They can have unique custom fields, unique statuses, and unique permissions to really be able to apply and create the specific environment that's needed for each group. And the great thing about that is that, a task that's marked completed is always going to count as done. Time logged is going to roll into the same report. So even if teams are set up differently, the data that we need to capture to understand progress and health is all still maintained. So there's no real downside to allowing different team members to have different statuses, different columns, etc. So one of the questions that came up was about sprint management in Hive, and here's where we're going to get into that a little bit. We also want to enable simple methods for managing sprints. This can be done through custom statuses, custom fields, labels, and there's some other options as well. So I'll show you some examples, and specifically some examples of how this can differ from team to team. So in my example, in my workspace, I have an Agile development project and an Agile marketing project. And these teams function a little bit differently. They may have slightly different needs. So for example, in my Agile marketing project, the statuses that this team may run through are backlog. Let's say it goes into the sprint, then it moves to in progress, in review, where it goes through proofing and approval, and then it's called done. Whereas maybe in a development project, we might have slightly different statuses. In this case, we've got one called backlog. We've got a sprint. We got in progress. Maybe it's done local. It's done on my machine, but I haven't put it in the staging environment yet. Now it's on staging and it's ready for testing. Now it's been tested and now it's complete. So even though these statuses are different, the data that we'll be able to capture from these two projects is ultimately the same. Now, when it comes to managing sprints, there's a few different ways to do this. One of the most common ways that I've seen is just like we're looking at here, where sprints may be a status name. And you can go in and add, sprint 12, sprint 13 afterwards if you'd like. The benefit of this is that it allows you to easily kind of slide and cascade items between the backlog and different sprints. So if I needed to say we're in sprint 10 right now, and this is going to need to be delayed, I can move it to sprint 11. I can also take, if I were in sprint 10 and want my team to ignore this, let me just throw it at the back here, so they can move from sprint 10 directly to in progress. Now, if you were planning out, 6 months worth of sprints, and they're in 2-week intervals, and you have 12 sprints, that might look a little crazy right here. So there are some other options for managing those as well. One of them, I have an example here of using labels. So you can apply labels as sprints instead, so they won't show up in the status, but then when you go to label view, you would be able to see what is teed up for each upcoming sprint. And then the same if you had a cascading delay or something like that, you're able to drag and drop and move them to the other project, or to the other status, So that is another method for managing sprints. And then the third that I want to show you is through a custom field. So I've created a custom field in my development project here to hold the sprint name. So you can see I have some that are teed for sprint 10, sprint 11, sprint 12. Now, the challenge when managing these is that you don't have an option to drag and drop between these custom fields. So let's say that I needed to cascade this to sprint 12. I'm going to come in here, open the drop down, and move them this way. I could also copy and paste this if I wanted to, which makes editing in bulk very easy. But that is another method for managing sprints without it needing to be actually in your status. So those are the three different main ways to organize and prepare your sprints to be worked. So I want to pause there because I know that's a big one, and ask, because we did have some specific questions on this area, if you have any questions at all about how you might want to set up your sprints. Cool. Well, I'll keep going. If you have any, put them in the chat and we'll take a pause and go back and answer them. Number 3, working products are the primary measure of progress. So another really important principle in Agile being that the goal is to get things to done. We want to be able to measure how many things are done, which is a very simple metric. Before we get into that, though, I do see we have a question from Joe. Is anybody using sub-projects to categorize sprints? That's a really good question, and I would love to hear the answer to that. So going back to the project overview really quickly, to show project completion at a glance, again, which is that primary measure of progress, we can click on the overview. And then over here in project completion, I can see my total number of actions and what's incomplete, what's complete, and it'll show me here in a graph. So this is a really, really easy way to capture, where are we at on the project, how many things are done. I would come to the project overview and I would just glance at the project completion. Now, if we wanted to dig in a little bit further, one of the lesser known features of Hive is charts. So when you're in table view inside a specific project, you can make charts. Beautiful charts like this. This is an example of a chart that I've created and saved. So just to show you how this is set up here, we can have charts in line graphs, bar graphs, and pie charts. And then we can group those actions by assignee, by label, which will help for sprint management, or by project if we were in a parent project that had multiple sub-projects here, or by status. So in my example, I'm filtering by status, and I'm able to see out of all incomplete actions where they are in the sprint. So this is also a really good way to set up, save charts, to give you quick access to the data that you need to see at a high level to understand sprint progress or overall project progress. Make sure we don't have no more questions on that one. Cool. So number 4 is that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information is by face-to-face communication. I fully believe this, and in this hybrid environment, it can be difficult to want to prioritize face-to-face communication, but especially in Agile teams when things are moving very quickly and we want to encourage, that daily conversation between business and stakeholders, the face-to-face conversation is critical. So we'll talk a little bit about the Zoom integration as well as Hive Notes for Zoom, which is a newer feature. If you go into your Zoom and you click on apps, there's a new app called Hive Notes for Zoom where you can actually open a note inside your Zoom and collaborate on that note with your other team members. It's super cool. But really quickly, I'm going to show you the other things that the Zoom integration can do. So when you have your Zoom integration turned on, here's an example of me chatting with my coworker, Tim, and we wanted to hop on a call. You can just type /Zoom and it stands up a Zoom call directly from your chat window. So we can both click open into this, and here we are talking face to face. It's amazing, and usually faster than just chatting as well. When you have the Zoom integration turned on, a couple other things that it can do is show you here, like for example, in our notes. So we are in our Move Faster with Hive Agile for All webinar today, which will be the title of the note because I have it associated to a Zoom meeting. And that note is pre-populated with my attendees, the time, the link to the Zoom, and everything, which is super helpful. And then lastly, when you have your My Day turned on alongside your Zoom integration, you will see your calendar over here in the left-hand or in the right-hand side. And then clicking on any of these will open the same information. You'll be able to easily access the Zoom, open the notes that are associated. And when it comes time for that meeting, you'll actually get a little pop-up up at the top that will say, hey, your meeting's about to start. Do you want to take notes? Do you want to open the Zoom, or both? Which is super helpful. Let's see, if I assign it to someone else and want to remind myself to check in on their progress, you can add reminders to action cards, which is really helpful. So where you go to set the due date for an action card, if you are looking, you will see add reminder for myself, and you can go click there and add a reminder that will notify you however many days or a week or hours before that thing is due that you'd like. So, number 5, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. I feel like many of us have experienced this before where maybe something went to a customer and it wasn't quite ready, it wasn't proofed, it missed somebody's eyes, and that can always be a little bit scary. We definitely want to eliminate that where possible by understanding, what is the process of review that our deliverables need to go through to ensure technical excellence and good design quality. And from there, we want to set up those proofing and approval rounds as templates. So that way, every time this type of deliverable comes through, we know we have confidence that it's going to go through the same process. Now, while proofing and approvals was originally created for design proofs, it can also be used for QA. So I will show us an example really quickly. I'm going to pop back out of my window here to talk through proofing and approvals. So let me get to my card here. Now, if I want to add a proof, let's say I'm going to add this landing page here. I can upload my proof. We have the option to add new file versions if we'd like, and then I'm going to request approval. Because I already have design templates or templates for my approvals in here, I'm just going to apply that so that you can see what this approval round looks like. So for this design, it's first going to go through internal review by these team members. Now, when these team members have approved this, then it will kick off the next round and go to my stakeholder, Kyle. When Kyle has approved this, then it will go to our customer review, where I have the option to add team members or external approvers. So for example, if I have a team member that's not part of my workspace, that's not an external user, but I just want to have access to this proof, I can send that directly to them as well. When they get that link, they'll only be able to see the proof, provide their comments and everything, and exit out. So once I request approval, what I'm doing is kicking off these stages. It's going to notify these team members first to say, hey, this is ready for you. You look at this proof. We can come in here, we can annotate, create comments, notes, whatever we want. And then going back to let me just request approval to show you what this looks like. I can say, hey, I've either approved this or I've requested changes. I can add a note if I'd like. And let's just say I approved it. So this will really help make sure that every deliverable of a certain type is going through the same approval process. Now, if you wanted to do this for QA instead of for design, as opposed to uploading a proof, there are a few other options. We can create a custom field for a dev link. You can put the dev link in the description if you'd like, or in a comment, and just kick off an approval round with no proof attached. And going through that process, those team members would know, to open the link in the associated field and approve that and apply their feedback either in sub actions or in comments here. So that's another way that we've commonly seen proofing and approvals used for QA. Let me take a pause here, see if we have any questions. So in addition to proofing and approvals, one of the other things that can make your life way easier is automation. So I have a couple examples here of some buttons to show you what these can do. So let's say I got this proof and you know what, this is no longer a priority and we're just going to move it back to the backlog. I've created an automation button so that I can send that to the backlog. And basically what this has done is I've said, hey, when I click this button, update my status and add this label. So by clicking that button, I've gone ahead and I've thrown this into the backlog. I've added a note to easily indicate to myself later that it was originally in a sprint and was moved, and flag that for my end of sprint metrics. Now let's say that this needed more information. Now I can also have a label to apply to say this needs more info. I can reassign it to a different person. I can change the status. There are a lot of different things that you can do with automation buttons. So if there are processes that you do all the time, you always find yourselves moving cards in this way, you can probably create an automation button to apply to all your cards to make that one click, which I love the automation features. So we covered that, and we talked a little bit about automation. But beyond that, really, when it comes to automation and a lot of the things we've talked about so far, the goal is simplicity. We want to eliminate the need to do things multiple times. We want to make the process easier to understand for new team members, and something that isn't so complicated that when you get into the system, you're just like, whoa, what am I looking at? So some of the ways to make that more familiar is by using action templates and project templates in addition to those automation buttons that we just saw. So with action templates, let's say that I have created a set of actions, this build homepage. I really like the way that this is laid out and I want to keep it. I can save it as a template if I'd like. In saving it as a template, we can predate things. We can set, if we want to include custom fields or approval rounds, and save our template. And then we can go back and apply those to other action cards later. So if I make a new action and I want to apply that same template of build homepage, I can do so. All of my dates, my assignees, my labels, everything persists, which is super helpful. So action templates are a really great way to eliminate rework by creating templates for any of the repeatable types of work that you do. In addition to action templates, there's also project templates. So let's say, we're a marketing team and we are always running campaigns, and our discovery process for campaigns is always the same. We can create, let's say, an action template or even a project template. A project template will be a template of the entire project as a whole with all of its settings and everything saved that you can then, that you can then apply to a new project. So if I go over here and I hit my apply button, and we're going to call this new. Now everything in this project is going to be applied here. So I've got my columns, I've got my titles, everything here. So when it comes to creating that type of simplicity in your organization, I think the hardest thing is typically finding out and understanding what those repeatable actions are. So that would definitely be my recommended first step when it comes to really, really trying to harness simplicity. So that's number 6. Just to recap, these are the 12 principles that we covered, but the ones highlighted in green being the business and the teams working together, keeping motivated individuals at the heart of our projects, valuing face-to-face communication, measuring progress in working software or working products, paying continuous attention to what matters, and making sure that our processes stay simple. So I have a couple of extra resources I wanted to share with you all today. These are some of the different certification alliances where you can go and get certified either as a Scrum Master, as an Agile practitioner, as an Agile project manager. But I definitely recommend perusing through these. There are a lot of details on really the nuances of how to master Agile within these in the different methodologies, whether you're running Scrum or Kanban or Lean or something else. There are tons of resources in these 3 links that are available to you. And yes, Walden will definitely get you a copy of this for the team. But that's it for me. I want to open it up for Q&A from you. What kind of questions do you have about running Agile in your organization? Google Drive documents and Google Drive document comments and collaboration showing up in Hive projects and tasks. That would be awesome. So one of the things that we didn't touch on, but that you can also do, is connect a file store. And this file store will allow you, when you're uploading documents, whether it's through proof or on a comment or something, you'll be able to access, the file tree, the structure, and everything here as well. So just like you would search on your local computer, if I were to connect to my Google Drive, I'm going to see all of my Drive documents, which is really helpful. So you mentioned Zapier integrations as well. I would be curious to know with linking to Google Drive and Slack. So we covered the Slack integration and just lightly touched on the Google Drive integration. I would be curious if there's another aspect of that you'd like to see. And comments on Sheets. Comments on Sheets. Could you elaborate on that one a little bit for me? And then while we're going and adding some questions, I want to touch back on time tracking based on projects. So if you're tracking time in a project, you can come to this time tracking and click on this little clipboard up here in the top right and go to reporting. So this is one of the, I think, most powerful features of Hive. We have the ability to separate our report out with the time frame by week, by month, by year. I like to use by year just to keep it simple. I'm looking for totals across a certain time frame. I can set my date range that I want to see this data for. And I don't think I've actually been logging time in my test space, but essentially this will show up with the ability to switch back and forth between project and person. So I can say, hey, for this person, show me the total time they've worked, and then all of the projects within that time period that they've worked. Or I can switch that to say, show me it by project, and then break it down by person. These are exportable, they're filterable. So I can filter by project tags, by custom field, by user role, or category of time. So custom fields, this is where if we set up a sprint field, for example, we'll now be able to filter down here. So there are a lot of additional options here, or if we wanted to look by a specific person or a specific role, if we only want to look across development, we can do all of that here and then export these reports. And then we can also choose what's displaying. So I want to see total number of hours and estimated hours. Billable amount will come in if you are working with budgets, if you have a set budget and a bill rate for a user. And then the utilization percentage is saying, based on this team member's total capacity of, let's say, 8 hours per day, and the amount of time logged, were they under or overutilized for that time? So if you see a utilization percentage exceeding past 100%, then you know without a doubt that somebody logged more time than they had available to them in that workday, which is a really great way for us to measure sustainability across our teams. So our team's adding comments to Google Sheets documents. Is there a way, instead of having to go there and read the comment, that we could track the changes? That would be really cool. And I think that it would be an awesome feature request. So if you haven't added a feature request to Hive before, you can click in the blue button up here, send question. It'll pop up in this little window. Get to chat with my lovely team here, but down here, you can say have feature request and search for any existing feature requests that have already been captured, or you can go and submit new ones. So this is a really great way to tell the product team at Hive what you'd love to have in the product. And the more votes that it gets, the sooner it will get developed. So our roadmap here at Hive is 100% community built. So I would definitely encourage you all to go in and drop features like that, for example. Great question, though. What other questions do you all have for me? Zapier, what? You'll have to tell me, Walden, what design pickle is. That's a new one. I don't think I've heard of design pickle. So, we really covered a lot today. We covered 6 different principles and how to apply them using features in Hive. Got some great resources for you in here as well. But before we go, feel free to keep asking questions and everything. I definitely want to answer any questions that you have, but I would also love to hear from everybody before they go. What is one thing that you really hope that we will talk about in a future webinar? Do we have links to training videos? Ooh, that is a great question. So if you go to help.hive.com, there is a section in our help center for videos. It's tutorial videos here. So these will really walk you through some of the kind of basic implementations of Hive. I would definitely be curious though, if there's a specific thing that you'd like to see on video, what that might be. Future topic, effective status roll-up / reporting across the organization. Brian, I love that topic. That is a great topic. And we could definitely spend a whole webinar on just reporting across the entire organization. So great idea. Wish we could have chatted about it today, but that's an awesome topic for everyone. And then integrating using Zapier. Okay, so when it comes to integrations using Zapier, there are some limitations based on the Zapier platform of what it can and can't do. So new inclusions to what Zapier will be able to provide is kind of, I don't want to say that it's like, out of Hive's control or anything like that, but there are some additional tools like Domo and Integromat, for example, that will provide you with slightly more powerful implementations of what Zapier can do. Whereas Zapier will say, hey, every time this specific thing happens, do this trigger. You can apply a little bit more conditional logic using something like Integromat or Domo. So I would definitely recommend looking into those as potential alternatives to Zapier if that's something that you're looking to do. Zapier's not bad. It's great. I don't want to turn you away from it or anything like that by any means. Just to say that there are some limitations in what it can and can't provide. Awesome. You guys have really great questions. So do you have any more questions for myself or for Andy or Aaron? Thank you so much, Joe. It's been my pleasure. You guys are awesome. Thank you all for the great questions that you've all had, and we look forward to seeing you next month. So if there aren't any other questions, we can go ahead and conclude a couple minutes early. If you do want to talk further, please send me an email. It's just gina.lockwood@hive.com, and I would love to answer any specific questions that you have. But this has been my pleasure. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you next month.